Hi, I'm David with EV World News. We talk about electric vehicles, green energy, and the stock markets. I'm back in studio today with our founder and chief editor, Bill Moore. How's it going today, Bill?
I am doing well. Thank you very much. Got my walk in this morning and beat the heat.
There you go. There you go. I'm gonna walk my dogs after this. Yeah, yesterday was a warm one. Today, I don't think it's gonna be quite as bad, but we'll see how that goes. So let's start out. Let's go ahead and let's talk about Slate. So there's been some videos coming out. A lot of people don't believe Slate can deliver on what they're promising. Now, you shared a video with me that
Hmm.
seemed more like it was. Now, the whole thing was generated with AI. Okay, so that wasn't a human didn't generate that, but it really seemed like it was a Ford commercial because they
Uh,
were really like trying to act like this is why you should buy a Ford
yeah.
instead of worrying about buying a Slate. And I thought that was kind of an odd take, but a lot of their argument was you could buy a 3-year-old, when the Ford F-150 Lightning start coming off of lease, that you could start picking those up, inexpensively in the same price range as what they think the Slate will cost.
Right.
Now,
And
the
you
thing,
have all the dealer support network and parts and all those kind of things that the video criticizes that Slate does not at the moment have.
yeah. So for those of you who are watching who may not know, Slate is a Jeff Bezos and Amazon-backed American EV manufacturer trying to make a two-door small pickup truck with a suggested retail price of $27,500 that with the $7,500 tax credit would be worth $20,000. One of the arguments is that by the time it actually comes to market, the $7,500 probably won't exist anymore. Even though there were some rules for companies that did what, less than 200,000 cars.
Right. But basically going back to the old 200,000 limit that we had back during the first, I don't know if it was during the Obama administration passed that or was during the early Trump administration. But there was
Yeah,
a limit. You got
right.
200,000 and then any kind of incentives went away after that number.
Yeah, and you know, I don't think they're still going to hit that production date. But it was interesting to hear the guy's argument. But a lot of it was, how do you compare to this? Ford can't make it for this price. But on the flip side, and they were trying to say, oh, you're taking off the screen. Well, that saves 1,000. You're taking off this, that saves 1,000. But
Right.
in reality, you're making a vehicle that's only probably half the displacement of those Ford F-150s. You're taking away half the cab. You're taking away width, height, a lot of different features. You got a battery that's less than half the size.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, so realistically, that concept of it
Yeah.
being
It'll be
inexpensive
really
doesn't escape me.
right. It'll be really interesting to see because I mean one of his main points is they don't have enough capital that this project would take. I think they have something like 130, 140 million dollars worth of capital. You can't bring a truck to production in a converted print shop, which he makes a big point about. Converting the print shop. You can't do it for that kind of money. They're going to need a lot more money than that. And other companies have been down this road, and the list of failures
In the
is long
U.S.,
in the
in the
U.S.
U.S., the failures in the U.S. is long. Now, here's one of the things. In China, they could probably produce that truck for $8,000. So you could certainly make it and sell it for 20. Okay. Um, that is one of the concerns
Yeah,
that I had with that video.
how long before the Chinese actually rip the design off and start selling their version of it, right?
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good idea. I think you'll reasonably see it. And maybe there's a little more to this than their $8,000 trucks they've got. I mean, even Toyota makes their Hilux fair and sells it fairly inexpensively overseas.
Yeah.
Okay, so it doesn't strike me as being impossible, but it has to fit
they
within
face
certain
a
constraints.
they face a daunting road ahead. I mean, we have to,
There's no question.
yeah,
There's no question.
I mean, apparently from the advanced, what, $50 he had to chip in to get an advanced reservation. Um, that's will people be willing to, follow through on that? Don't know. I mean, we'll just have to see whether they can hit the dates. Or what, 2027? I think they're talking about, right?
Yeah, and I don't know. It doesn't seem that far fetched to me. We've looked at this deal where VinFast is looking at they're delivering that Suzuki Samurai looking vehicle
Uh-huh.
in Vietnam for $10,000. And I haven't seen the VF3 come to the US yet, but we were supposed to see it come to the US for $20,000. So if that is possible, why can't a US company figure something out? Because this Slate truck isn't exactly a large vehicle.
No, no.
So that's one of
Although
the
it
things that,
supposedly has the same size bed as an F-150. Of course, the F-150 is a four-door, I think that's the cab over. Of course, that's another one of his criticisms. Nobody wants a two-door pickup truck. The market just isn't there. Everybody wants a four-door, so.
that's completely not true. That's completely not true. So the one thing is, if you were driving around in a two-door pickup truck, unlike riding a bicycle, you don't feel like you're just going to get crushed on the road, right? So that's one of the arguments of why people don't want to ride bicycles or motorcycles or things like that in the US, is because the other vehicles around you are just too large. And
Yeah.
this is an effective method of transportation. Um, there are plenty of small cars on the market.
Right.
I mean, this isn't the same as like a smart car for two kind of thing. This is a pickup truck, right?
For two.
And
Right.
yeah, for two people. And
Although, is it really? Is it a bench? Do they have a bench seat in it? I don't recall. Is it a
I
bench
think it's
seat or
supposed to
is
be a
it a?
bench. I think it's supposed to be a bench seat.
So theoretically, it'd be three then. So
You could.
yeah,
Um,
the old fashioned way, man. I remember. You remember those cars before the bucket seats came in? They all used to be bench seats.
right. I remember. I
Yep.
remember. My father, when I was a little kid, we had a Ford F100 pickup truck with three on the tree and a bench seat, and that's what I learned to drive. That was the
Right.
first vehicle I learned to drive, was with that clutch and that three on the tree, um, shifting. And I'm so glad that went away. It just, that wasn't a real. I always liked the shifter on the floor. Okay,
Okay. Right.
so I like that better than the on the tree, but it was still just different.
I've told you in the past, haven't I, that I learned to drive a Devco milk truck. You stood up driving it. The top half of the brake pedal, it only had one pedal. The top half, well, you had the accelerator obviously, but you had the
Mhm.
top half of it was the clutch, and the bottom of the thing was the brake. So that's what my dad is when I was a teenager helping on the milk route. That's what I learned to drive, was a Devco milk truck for Alameda Dairy.
Damn, I wonder where Devco is as a manufacturer these
Oh
days.
boy. Well, probably went out with the milk, home delivery milk business.
Yeah. Um, the interesting discussion we're having over here in the chat. Let me see. The Lucid Air Sapphire Edition was in the car and driver shootout a year ago. 4.1 mile track. After one hot lap, it needed cool down time because the motors were so hot. It only took 4 laps to completely drain the battery. Wow. I wonder how fast they were going. That is one of the things with EVs. But it's true with gas too. When you really push that accelerator, your range doesn't do real well, no matter
Right.
what type of fuel
Yeah.
you're using. Um, let's see. Yeah, the tall, skinny tires, the white walls. What's this? It's over 105 in Arizona. My Solterra motor has had no issues and range is fine. I don't believe that heat really lowers your battery range, but it does make it slower to charge, right? Whereas cold kind
Cold
of
and
has an effect on both.
Yeah, cold impacts it.
Yeah.
I mean, my range typically in my Fiat 500 would always summertime come around. I could,
Hmm.
get that thing up to one point. I think I saw 124 miles, but the temperature was perfect, right? Typically in
Hmm.
the wintertime, I would be lucky to see 90. So
Hmm.
yeah, it doesn't pack it. Even that's in a garage where you're getting some heat off of the house, bleeding
Right.
through and protected from the wind and that type of thing. So yeah, it
Do we
does
have
have.
wind chill here, Bob? I mean, Bill, do we have wind chill here in Nebraska?
Oh yeah, it's balmy. It's balmy here in Nebraska.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. The air
Florida
conditioner
would be
definitely running.
envious.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. But anyways, I mean, this whole slate situation is it's just an interesting argument.
Well,
Can they
I want to
deliver
see
something?
him succeed. I'm
Well,
not
yeah, I do
not
too.
trying to be in,
I
I
think it's
want
great.
them to succeed. But, I think he makes some valid points that there are some hills to climb that coming up ahead of him. So,
So when I owned a security company back in the 90s, we used both patrol cars and two-door trucks.
okay.
Okay, but they were the small trucks like Ford Rangers. Other companies were using Toyotas and Nissans,
Right.
and there was something called the chicken tax on those little trucks. And so
Right.
the foreign trucks disappeared, and eventually the Ford Ranger disappeared too. So in truth, market demands said the two-door truck wasn't that popular. Okay, but now you've got a different situation. Cars aren't affordable anymore. Okay, and not
Yeah.
that they've ever been truly affordable, but they've gotten ridiculous ever since COVID. Okay, the pricing has the what should we call it? The inflation on cars
Yeah.
since 2020 has just
Average,
been
average
nuts.
what? Average cars are $47,000, something like that. And
Yeah,
most of the loans now are for 86 months
yeah,
that people are taking out.
and most full size four-door pickup trucks are in the 80 to 100,000 range. You
Hmm.
can find some cheaper, but it's not super common. And that doesn't matter if it's fueled by gas or if it's fueled by electricity. They're all pretty damn expensive. So the idea of a sub $30,000 EV truck is pretty appealing. Now, Ford has the Maverick. Okay, the
Right.
Maverick is a four-door that you can get as either just regular gas or as a hybrid. The hybrid is pretty good MPG. It's not a plug-in hybrid, but it gets around. It's supposed to get like 36 highway, 42 city, and
That's
with
pretty
its
good for a
hybrid
pickup truck.
configuration,
Yeah.
it is. It is, and I know people who own them, and they say they really probably get about 36 all around.
Right.
And that's pretty damn impressive. That's about triple what you'd normally expect to get out of a full-size pickup truck.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay, but I don't think Ford pushes the Maverick real hard. And I don't know if a lot of people even know the damn thing exists. And it's been out for like 2, 3 years. But I do see a lot of fleets using the Maverick. Okay. Yeah, yeah, that's a good question, Owen. Why isn't there an all-electric Maverick? Well, one of the things is Ford has yet to figure out how to make a profitable EV or to make one cheap enough because Ford has different constraints than Tesla does. For starters, Ford is unionized, and they have all these different segments for manufacturing their parts. So they only do certain types of assembly in their facilities. The parts are mostly manufactured at OEMs and shipped over, and then they go into their assembly
And they get
line and all
assembly.
that.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, and so whereas Tesla manufactures most of the parts of their vehicles, so I think you end up there. Tesla has figured out how to keep the cost of making a car down. And that's why they're so profitable per car compared to other companies. Is so Tesla's not as profitable as Ferrari, but Ferrari makes theirs by the fact that people are willing to pay an extra couple $100,000 for a car, than they would if it was another brand. Whereas with Tesla, it's all a matter of they figured out how to make it more economical. And oh, I got to see what the story is.
Putting
Man,
diesel
putting
in her
diesel in
Jeep.
her Jeep Liberty. Oh no. Um, oh, she actually has a diesel motor. Okay, she gets 34 miles per gallon all day, and cost was $4,000 higher for the diesel motor. Well, you used to
Oh,
see lots of diesel Volkswagens, and some of the diesel Volkswagens got like
oh,
the Jetta got like 44 highway, and
particularly when you had them on the test stand.
oh yeah, we'll talk about Dieselgate. Yeah,
Yeah.
um, yeah, but anyways, no, I'm just saying. I mean, there's been some pretty good things in diesel. Of course, diesel has more energy per gallon than regular fuel, but still, it's a little bit of a different situation. But I'm just saying, I think there's ways you could get that production cost where it needs to be for Slate. So I didn't necessarily agree with it because I've seen too many examples. I know what the cost was to manufacture the Derek Auto, and I'm under NDA on that, but I know that based on what the Derek Automotive vehicles are being produced for, I know that it's possible to put a normal vehicle. The issue that comes up is when you're making a normal high speed vehicle is getting all of the
Certifications.
safety,
Yeah.
yeah, the
Yeah.
certifications, the
Yeah.
safety equipment, all that, and
Yeah.
that's a bit of it. I don't know how much extra that
Yeah, as long,
adds to the piece.
yeah, as long as you're, looking at the low speed market where the vehicle has a top speed of 25 and it can't go any roads more than 35 miles an hour. And there's a lot of applications for that kind of thing, particularly in urban environments or campus environments. But yeah, as soon as you start throwing that thing on an interstate or, busy turnpike or something, no, it has to logically, I mean, it just has to meet those higher standards.
So, one of the things with um, like Elon Musk. So I remember a couple of years ago, he was talking in an interview. He said one of the big costs of making a car is all of this extra safety equipment. And he said this is going to be one of the beauties of when all the cars become autonomous and they're talking to each other. So eventually, the idea is that the cars will be talking to each other and not having accidents. He said if you could then save that $10,000 on every car in these extra things, all of a sudden you start making cars much more affordable, and that $10,000 is more than it costs to put all the equipment to make the thing autonomous.
Well, that's assumed they all agree with each other.
There you go. I mean,
What
there.
happens when the AI starts arguing with this version versus this version, right?
I'm a
How
BMW. I have the right of way.
yeah, yeah.
um,
Oh.
but
So
you
anyway,
know,
hey, it's an interesting thing, guys. There's video out there that talks about the pros and cons of there's many videos out there where people are praising and showing great promise in Slate, and then there are as you would expect, the naysayers. So I came across the naysayer, which I had not seen before, and shared it with Dave, and getting his reaction to it now.
yeah, I mean, but the guy had plenty of valid arguments. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
one of the things is how many car successes have there been in the last 50 years where a new manufacturer started making cars and gotten anywhere? Well, it's Tesla, right? I mean, I think they're the only one in the
Yeah.
past 50 years to be successful. And we have high hopes for Lucid and Rivian, and they appear to me, that they will eventually be successful. Okay, and for various reasons we've discussed many
Yeah,
times.
Lucid. By the way, Lucid now has three models they're talking about, and they have come up with, I think it's Ocean, which they got, as soon as Fisker went
Fisker.
bankrupt, Lucid got apparently a copyright on Ocean. Then
Uh-huh.
Earth, which I think is obviously their base model, and the third one I think maybe Sky or something like that. So they're thinking ahead, coming up with multiple models. So
I saw an Ocean here in town a week or two ago,
I'm
and I was just
sorry.
like, what I'm like, what the hell is that? And it's like, oh, it's a Fisker.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
was really surprised to see one. Um, they can be picked up really cheap. They're the used ones and stuff. They're really inexpensive. Um,
Well,
but because nobody.
back when Bruce Simons was still with us, the head of Omaha Steaks, my wife
Mhm,
worked for him. I got to ride in one of the very first Fisker Karmas that
mhm.
he bought here in Omaha, and he eventually sent back under Nebraska's lemon law because he found a whole bunch of problems with it. But so yeah, so there's I don't know. Is Henrik out of the game now, or will he come back with yet a third time? So we'll see. But anyway, he can't use Ocean because Lucid now has apparently gotten permission from the patent and trademark office to use the name Ocean for their next car.
So let's talk a little about Lucid. Um, so Lucid is expanding its operations in Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, they acquired several assets from Nikola when it went bankrupt,
Right.
including its Phoenix building and its Coolidge facility, which I didn't know that happened. And let's see. The Nikola building went dark in February. His electric truck maker declared bankruptcy, laid off 855 people in Arizona. Lucid decided to buy the building. It has dynos, battery testing facilities. It's set up as a hub to be able to do product design. So by purchasing the building, they saved hundreds of Arizona jobs. We were able to offer over 300 jobs, and 250 of those people are now joining us that were people from Nikola. They're at our Coolidge facility that we also took over from Nikola.
Now, where's the
Huh.
Coolidge facility? That one does. Is that down in the Phoenix area?
It says it's saying this is all in Phoenix.
Okay. I've not heard of,
Um,
I've not heard of Coolidge as a community, but then I'm not all that familiar. I mean, I've been to Phoenix a few times and um, actually got to drive my very first. Well, yeah, that was my very first EV1 in Phoenix,
yeah, so they say they have a new
southeast of Phoenix. Okay, thank you, Owen.
Lucid. Okay, Lucid has a new midsize crossover. They want to price under 50,000 and build it at that Coolidge facility starting next year. So hopefully they've got the money to do that. But like I always say, Lucid's got backers with deep pockets.
Right.
So you know, and then there was Lucid news in Norway. So there was a big EV range test in Norway, had a winner and a loser in strange ways. And in both cases, it's the Lucid Air. And 27 EVs were pitted in a real world range test across Norway to see how close they came to their claimed WLTP range. Now, that's similar to our EPA range estimates,
Right.
but it's one that they do outside the US. And so the range estimate for the Lucid Air was 596 miles on the WLTP. That's a lot of range.
That's a lot of range. That's here. What is that? Here to Chicago? Here to Denver?
Uh,
That's pretty dang good, actually.
I don't know where Lucid gets its batteries. I assume they buy them from cattle, but I really have no idea. It could be domestic.
Well, yeah, there are a number of domestic, companies here. LG Chem supplies batteries to, I think, GM. So yeah, that's a good question to look it up.
Let's just see. Oh, Panasonic.
Okay, yeah. So,
They're currently getting them from Japan, but
okay.
it's a future facilities being built in DeSoto, Kansas.
Ah, okay, cool.
Yeah, I bet that's an Indian reservation. I
Um,
would I would bet money that's going to be an Indian reservation. There seems to be a bunch of advantages to doing a lot of things in energy when it's related to Indian reservations
yeah,
in the
because
United States.
they're sovereign governments, so they can sort of do
Right.
things what they want to do and sort of that would be nice. Thumb their nose. Well, on my walk, I have been listening to this book that was written published in 1885 about how the United States government seriously, and pardon my French here, screwed over the Native American tribes. And
Mm-hmm.
so to get them to be able to sort of do this to the federal government after how the federal government historically has treated them, I find that kind of rich. Anyway.
No, there's no question, but there's certainly a lot of advantages in the energy space when it relates to indigenous societies, and it seems to be that way in a lot of parts of the world. It's not just the U.S. Canada's really big
Well,
in
yeah,
that, and
just as
other
long as
parts areas too.
they don't take advantage of them, like the abandoned uranium mines and things that down on the Navajo reservation, high cancer rates and things like that they've experienced.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, well, let's see where it goes. But they found, for example, they could set up Tesla dealerships in states
Mm-hmm.
that won't allow Tesla to have a dealer, a dealership that be able to sell directly to consumers. They could do that off of Indian reservations, which I think was a slick move. So,
Is the Tesla location over in Council Bluffs on Indian land?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, possibly
It's
could be because historically, yes, that whole strip south of what
yeah.
Council Bluffs is right now, that used to be Indian reservation land back in the
Isn't that
1850s.
well? I guess they have riverboat casinos there, but not all of those casinos are on the river.
No,
So
but they're generally under Native American management. So,
mhm. um,
are they tax
so
exempt? Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know. That you'd have to ask the. We've got lots of tribes around us here,
so
but
they
I don't
certainly
know
have
the answer
different
to that.
rules. I know. I was looking at some things now. If you import goods and you think you're going to be sitting on the goods for a long time, like it's going to take you 6 months to a year to sell the inventory you bought, your
Mm-hmm.
best bet is to have them stored. And let's just say you're coming from a high tariff country, is to have them stored at a 3PL on an Indian reservation. There's a few of those down north of Kansas City. Um, there's a couple places there where you can have goods shipped in from China and have them
Mm-hmm.
shipped directly there, and you don't pay the tariffs
Right.
until you ship it to the customer.
Right.
So you don't incur the tariff till you actually send to the customer, because the Indian lands are considered to be a duty-free zone,
Zone.
but
Yeah.
it doesn't exclude you from the tariffs. Okay, it's just it excludes you from paying for them when they first land in North America, and instead you're able to then pay it when you ship it to the customer. Otherwise, if you were to just offload it in Long Beach, you have to pay the tariff right then when it
Right.
arrives.
Right.
So,
Which
oh
require
God,
more energy.
AI data centers for sure. It's not even going to be close, even if everybody changed to EVs. I mean, realistically, an EV doesn't use more energy than an air conditioner in a house.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're talking, if even that. I mean, we figured this out once, that if you use an electric hot water heater, that uses about the same amount of energy as an electric vehicle. So it's it's just um, yeah, it is a little bit crazy why you always hear this about the EVs are going to break the grid. It's like I'm always just like,
That's
have you
because there certain vested interests don't want you to buy an EV. I wonder why.
yeah. Yeah, no, I get it. I get it. But it is crazy how, um, some of this, plays out. No, I hear the story about the EVs that the grid can't handle them. It's like, have you heard about AI and data
Right.
centers?
Yep.
Yeah,
They're having to buy their own nuclear power plants to
right.
power them.
Well, and this is the whole reason why all of a sudden nuclear is cool
Yeah.
to talk about again. It's not the fact, because I'm getting involved in fourth generation nuclear, but the thing is, up until 2 years ago, when Amazon, Meta, um, Bill Gates, and a few others in the AI space decided they needed to start investing in nuclear power, that it all of a sudden started people started really paying attention to it. And um, it's if it weren't for them, nuclear probably still wouldn't be getting pushed
Yeah.
the way it is right now. So
By
all
the
of a
way, I
sudden,
don't know if you've heard, but the World Bank has now lifted its ban on making loans for nuclear projects.
I did not see that. Is
Yep.
that just this
Yep.
week?
Just this week. Yep.
Oh God, I need to find that. Um, yeah, that's a good article. Yeah, that'll be definitely. I don't think the robots are going to use a whole lot of juice. Okay, I don't think they're gonna.
Well, you're not talking about very big batteries either. The battery
Yeah,
powering an Optimus is what, probably less than 10 kilowatts,
it's going to
kilowatt,
be probably the
kilowatt
equivalent of
hours.
having, you know, 5 or 6 phones. I don't really
Yeah.
see it as
Yeah.
being something, you know, really massive. Um, but anyways, so in the deal in Norway, which somehow we got off topic there, but um, so out of the
That's
27
easy.
vehicles, the Lucid Air drove the longest distance, but it also had the biggest discrepancy between its observed range and the WLTP claim. So it actually comfortably beat the other 26 cars, having driven 514 miles on one charge. That's in line with other independent tests, but it's way off its claimed WLTP range of 596. The difference is 81 miles or 13.7%. Now we know that WLTP produces higher range numbers than the EPA test cycle used in the US. We weren't expecting the undisputed range king, the Lucid Air, to be so far off the mark. That is kind of surprising that they had it as, some cars exceeded theirs. So the Model Y drove 405 miles, and that was 11% more or 41
Hmm.
miles more than what they advertise. So that was a pretty big deal. The Zeekr 7 went 368 miles, which was 32 miles more. So that was about almost 10%. And the Model 3 went 448 miles, which is 11 miles more than the official number for that. That's the long range rear wheel drive. That's a lot of range for that Model 3.
Yeah.
Um, let's see what we got here. Um, the Terminator class. Yeah,
Oh, thanks for keeping it light, Joel. We appreciate
yeah,
it.
yeah. The liquid. They're working on the liquid metal Terminators
Right, exactly. Yep. Just go
already.
right through the bars of the door, the jail.
Yeah. Um, let's see. The Skoda Elrock, a rising star on the European EV scene, matched its 263-mile claim. Oh no, almost matched it. It
Uh,
was 1.2 miles short. Um, but other cars that exceeded their range were the BYD Tang, the Peugeot E5008, the MGS5, Volkswagen ID7
Boy, they
GTX
tested a lot of
Tourer,
them, didn't they?
yeah,
Wow.
Polestar 4, the BMW iX, the BYD Sea Lion 7, Lotus Amaya, Lopel Grandland, Mercedes-Benz G580, Porsche Macan EV, Voya Courage.
My
Wow,
God,
they
I
had a
love it.
lot of different brands.
I
All these
love it.
brands. It's like, yeah, Bill, that we're going from 5 or 6 EVs in the world to, literally,
Just
100 or
dozens.
more.
Yeah,
Yeah,
scores
it's
of them.
just, and now they're starting to be companies. I mean, I've never heard of Voya, never heard of, well, I've heard of Skoda.
Yes, go to the
Um,
Volkswagen company, owned company.
oh, the Opel Grandland. I didn't know Opel still was around. I,
Yes, somebody, if I recall, somebody bought them, and I think maybe it was one of the Indian conglomerates or something. Could be wrong.
uh-huh.
I mean, it was originally, obviously, it was originally a German company.
Right.
Um,
Oh, is it not
but
German anymore?
I don't know. Could be. I mean, obviously, look, how can I keep track of? I'd have to have what kind of a staff here to keep track of all these cars, and there's just me, folks, and Dave, and then
Yeah.
Mike.
No. No, I get it. So one of the things when I'm discussing the topic of nuclear with people, we talk about is energy poverty. Okay, so
Yeah.
this is kind of weird to think about. We're from the United States. I mean, our electricity is always on, but it's the access to energy and all that. Well, I found this article on LinkedIn. Somebody was talking about how the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, and how this applies to EVs. And I don't know that it was really a hit piece, but it was saying, if you're well off, you own a home, and you have a charger at home,
Hmm.
then owning a EV is both convenient and inexpensive because the
Yes.
electricity is cheap to put in.
Raise my hand.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
if you live in an apartment or you live in a condo or someplace where you don't have dedicated parking and you have to
Yeah.
go to public charging is, just as expensive probably as
Gasoline.
gasoline.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and if you live in the UK, it's probably worse. It's probably twice as expensive as gasoline. But the thing is, the people who make those charging stations have to make money too. And up until the past year, I'd never heard of anybody actually making money in the charging business. So I really felt it was a really dead business to be in. It's all of a sudden there's starting to be enough EVs now where it's
Yeah.
possible that those business models can work now.
Yeah.
Okay. So for all those people who couldn't raise money in that space for the past 2, 3 years, you probably kind of lucked out. Now, if you can go, you might be able to raise some money
Yeah.
because
I
there's
wish. Yeah. I
evidence
wish
to
we.
show it works.
Yeah. I wish we could come because not daily, but weekly, I drive by. There's all kinds of apartments going up here now around us where I live.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very desirable community to be in. We've got lots of, data centers going in and, shipping centers. Just down the road is the Amazon Center. So we got, those things, but there's all these apartments and all these cars and trucks parked in front of these buildings. None of them are EVs. Why? Because there's nowhere to charge them. So I
Mm-hmm.
really wish we had. In fact, one of the ideas that behind my fair share project, where
Mm-hmm.
I have to pay a tax to make up for the gasoline taxes I don't pay because I don't use gasoline. So I have to pay that. So the government charges me $150 a year, probably
Mm-hmm.
shortly going to $250. Well, that's fine. If we could take that money and then use that to give these people that live in apartments and other areas, give them a way to charge their vehicles, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's just no way. I mean, there's no incentive, as far as I know, for an apartment owner or operator to provide electric power, out to his tenants. And I'd love to find some way that money that gets channeled into helping everybody have access that I have here in my house, in my garage, to affordably own and operate an electric vehicle. Um,
Now,
so
I have some local apartment developers who occasionally watch our show, and they've expressed to me that they do put in all their new developments, they put level 2 chargers in. And I've suggested to them that they include access to level 1 charging.
sure,
And it wouldn't be that expensive for them to
no,
provide, 1.25 kilowatts an hour to some people to charge that way. And those people could overnight, they could add,
they could
40
fill up.
miles of range.
Yeah, they could fill up their car overnight. Yeah,
Yeah. And so I think that, to me, if, what are you talking about? They use, let's just say they use 10 kilowatts every day at 12 cents. That's $1.20. You're
right.
providing them 30 days a year or a month. You're providing them a $36 benefit. And how many of those people are actually driving EVs? And then if they had that access to be able to charge their vehicle for free, how many more people would they get wanting to be tenants, right? So, I mean, that was kind of my argument, is that, you know, they could do that, because even level 2 charging, you basically got to charge for it, right? Or it wouldn't be
Yeah.
normal to give that away for free.
Yeah.
Okay, and they're getting extra infrastructure put in so they can have those level 2 chargers. They're getting extra transformers and things like that so they can have that. Whereas if they had level 1 charging, it's nothing's really changing
Not
in the
really.
apartment complex.
Very
Yeah,
little.
yeah. So to me, I could see giving away level 1 charging on a regular basis, just because
And and most of those apartments too are on separate meters. If you go by an apartment complex, you'll see the bank, right, of meters where everybody is being charged separately for their electricity. As far as I
oh
can tell, that may not apply to all of them, but the ones I see around here, there's wall of separate meters, which I guess certainly has to be, to each one of those apartments. Am
yeah.
I
So
wrong?
Joel, oh no, they have it. I mean, all of I think the challenge is just the metering if you're going to charge people for it. So I don't know how you work that out.
Well, they already have the meters, but they have to figure out how do you get the meter that feeds the panel box in that apartment? How do you get that
That's what I'm
particular
saying.
meter?
I think
Yeah,
that's I think it's unrealistic for most of these, 2-story apartment buildings, things like that,
yeah,
or 3-story apartment buildings. It's unrealistic to have it connected
yeah. Well, yeah, that's what I'm
to the
saying.
unit.
That it'd be too
Yeah,
complex.
yeah,
I
but
mean, if
that's
they
fine.
had done something before the thing had been built and it's kind of engineered that in to run a separate tap out to a, because don't each one of those, don't they assign a parking spot to each one of those apartments? Oftentimes they do.
Sometimes they do, but in most of them, it's first come,
Just
first
for
serve.
sure, yeah.
Yeah, it really depends on where you're at, but usually it's, you may have a garage that you pay an extra $50 a month or $100 a month for,
Right,
but then that's a sign, but that's different.
right.
So the minimum cost to put in a home charger, 2,500 is probably on the high side. So the main thing is, so we had the CEO of Emporia Energy on here over a year ago, and he sells. He's like the number 2 Amazon seller of EV chargers, and he sells chargers. I think they go for as little as about $300. Okay, for a level 2 charger, but it needs the same type of hookup your dryer needs. Okay, so you've got to get. Here's basically the problem. So you're going to put it in your garage or put it at the front of your house. How close is that to your electric panel? And does your
Mm-hmm.
electric panel have the available, fuses or whatever it needs to be able to connect? Okay, so that's where the cost is, and it's if somehow your panel is in the garage already, then it's
You're
probably not going
you're
to cost very much.
No, it won't cost anything. Yeah, to give you some actual cost, okay? I'm going to swing
Mhm.
my computer around. Can you see the panel there
Yep.
next to the bookcase? Right?
Mhm.
That's where my electrical panel is. Where is the power that feeds this? The meter is on the opposite side of the lot, right? And where is the garage? The garage is clear over on that side of the house, opposite of the meter. So they had to
Mhm.
run the power from that box up out my house, across my crawl space, and down into my garage to do this, right? So that was about, I think I was $1,200, I believe, to do that. The Fiat 500 came with a charger that allowed me to do either level 1 or level 2. And once I got that 240 box out there, circuit out there, I was able then to go to level 2. And then once we got the Volt only came with a level 1 charger.
Mhm.
No idea why. Fiat could do both, but GM didn't want to do that. So I had to go buy a charger, level 2 capable charger. That was $300. So for me, I paid about $1,500 to put it in here at my house. But that's
And
going to stay.
did you get a rebate on that from anything?
No, No, I didn't
No
get a
rebates?
rebate on it.
Because
No, I
sometimes some of the local power companies will have a $500 rebate if you
right.
get
Yeah,
monthly.
OPP does. Yeah, OPPD, as far as I know, does not have that rebate. And with my current tax situation, there was no point in filing for it. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and that's the idea of going off of both parking lot lights or even street lights going
yep.
down the road. That's been talked about a lot. I mean,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it is because
And
you've
it's
got,
being done. It's being
yeah,
done.
yeah. I could even see having, some solar panels around and, giving free charging during the day, or, you know, you only get charged when the sun's out. You only get it. Um, but I mean, there's just different ways to look at it in that way. Most apartments are separate. Yeah, so they potentially become condos. Yeah, but if you're an apartment owner, you really don't want to be paying people's utilities, because when people don't pay the bill themselves, they abuse it. They'll leave the water running 24
Oh, yeah.
hours a
Yeah.
day. There's all kinds of just dumb things they'll do. I've managed projects to reduce water consumption in an apartment complex where they pay the water bill. And it was unbelievable how much of a savings it was just to change out some of the plumbing fixtures. Oh, it cost 500, but I did it myself.
Yeah.
Are you an electrician, Owen, or I'm just kind of curious.
That was what I did not want to tackle on my own.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of those things, like with Mike Herzog being an engineer, we talk about the do's and don'ts of, electricity sometimes, there's some things you probably shouldn't do
Oh,
yourself.
there
But
you go. He's an
oh,
HAV.
okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So you have
You
an
know
idea
your
what's
way
going on.
around a current, particularly
Yeah.
240.
Yeah. Anyways, but it
Oh, and
was
yeah, I was going to
I,
say
I
that.
just,
By the way, you were talking earlier about Bill preaching.
yeah.
That's not far from true. That's not far from being true, because
Yeah.
for about 10 years I was, but we won't go there.
Yeah. Yeah. Bill is an ordained minister.
Yeah, but we
Uh,
won't talk about that.
yeah. Um, that's something
Reprobate.
we could we could have people come on the show and you could marry them on the show.
Well,
That would be
nah, well, probably my credentials aren't up to date, so
okay.
we'll not
Okay.
do that. I
Yeah.
had, by the way, no, we won't go there, but I do have a story about that. I'll tell you sometime, where I ran afoul of the state of Virginia because I married a young couple who I shouldn't have married, I was told. But anyway, that's another story for another time.
Okay. Oh Lord. But anyways, I just found this whole thing about the poor getting poorer driving EVs, because I with this $4,000 tax credit, I've told a lot of people about this, and like you and I, a lot of times we were talking about some of these cool cars we'd see, like that Cadillac ELR,
Uh-huh.
and ones that would come up for the $4,000 tax credit. I mean, the Chevy Volt's a good one. I mean, I'm talking about for apartment dwellers, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
and they probably have some access to electricity, like we're talking about level one, and which they could charge that enough for their daily driving, and then they'd have access to gas when they didn't. But it just it was an interesting take on EVs are like a classist. They're trying to make it a classist thing,
Yeah.
and for a long time they've always said it's just your rich liberals that drive EVs, and that's not true by any stretch. I know lots
I
of
am
rich
not
conservatives
a
that drive them.
rich liberal. I am a liberal. Well, I prefer the term progressive, but rich, Well, it depends. I guess if you compare me to someone living in a hovel in, Rwanda, yeah, I guess from a material possessions point of view, but rich in the sense of a U.S. economic situation, nah.
So one of my tennis friends owns a number of car dealerships around the Omaha, used car dealerships around the
Okay.
Omaha market that are pretty well known. And it's funny because I've seen him driving a Lamborghini Urus. I've seen him in Suburbans and all this, or Escalade, stuff like that. But he mostly drives Teslas. But I've never seen him driving the same car twice. Okay, so he's constantly just pulling cars off the lot, but he really seems to like um, Model Ys, Model X's,
Oh
and
yeah.
Model S's, and because he's always driving them with a dealer plate, so I always know exactly who it is. But
Yeah.
it's just funny. He mostly drives Teslas. I really couldn't blame him though when he had a Urus in stock to want to go drive that around and show it off a little bit. But you just don't. That's not. It was the only time I've ever seen a Lamborghini Urus here in Omaha.
Huh.
It's an SUV, which
Right.
which is now a plug-in hybrid.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, if
You're
you're going
ahead
to
of
go
me on
spend,
that one. I haven't seen that.
yeah, they've got a $350,000 plug-in hybrid. That's what you need. All right. Yeah. Um, all right. So let's talk about our lead story today, the Windrose electric semi truck.
We're 50
So,
minutes into this thing, and now we're talking about the
yeah.
Windrose.
Well, I wanted to make sure everybody listened to the end to get to the best part, because our viewership always goes up, every minute. The longer we go,
The
I
longer we
suspect if
go,
we
is
went
that
for
it?
3 hours, we'd be in the thousands of viewers. Yeah, but it's just funny how it just constantly keeps building. But anyways, so Windrose is a Chinese company that's making tractor trailers in the United States. Aren't
Well,
they
they're
making
making
them
the
in Georgia?
tractor. They're making the tractor. I don't think they're
Tractor.
doing the trailer.
Well, they're not doing the trailer, but you know
Right.
what I mean.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know what you mean.
So they ran a test in California to Arizona. Um, they did an all-electric 578-mile route validation with a fully loaded trailer across the I-10 corridor, making the doubters look like dummies. That's kind of a bold statement. But anyways, the Windrose R700 features efficient aerodynamic bodywork and a competitive price tag
Looks a
and a
lot
sleeper
like a
configuration.
looks a lot like a Tesla semi, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really, yeah, I guess that front makes it look a little bit like a Tesla.
Hmm.
But I mean, in reality, all your big trucks should kind of be shaped that way. But the problem is, you'd normally have a motor out here, right?
Right. Right. Yep.
So, that's one of the reasons why it's a little
You
bit
got to
of
have
a
a
different look.
great big radiator out there to cool that engine. So
Yeah. They ran it with 75,000 pound combined load. The max you can do for an electric truck is 82,000. So you get an extra 2,000 pounds for driving an EV truck. Normally it's only 80,000 with petrol. They went 289 miles each way between Colton, California and Buckeye, Arizona, down the I-10 freight corridor that runs coast to coast from California to Florida. This Windrose, its electric motors produce 1,045 horsepower. Yeah, it should have had very little strain on the uphill portions.
no kidding.
Um, let's see. They've completed tens of thousands of miles of real world testing on a route between Shanghai and Guangzhou. So they
And
are
not
making them in China.
Yeah, and not only that, but they've tested it because I sent you a supplement to that. I did a little additional research, and they have run those tests almost globally. They've done all, not only in Asia, but of course now North America, but I think also in Australia and a bunch of other places that they've done. So they've actually clocked in many tens of thousands of miles on this class of vehicle.
So it's got the 800-volt high voltage
Hmm.
platform for charging, dual inlet, so it can charge on both sides of the vehicle. So it technically can take over a megawatt at a time. So that's pretty fast charging. Got to have some electrical bandwidth there to put
Yeah.
in megawatt charging. That's what I was telling you.
The
I've
grid
actually had
sag.
I've had people reach out to me about putting nuclear at basically at truck stops.
Right.
So it could be a real thing. You start talking about small nuclear reactors putting in 20 to 40 megawatts so that the tractor trailers can charge up. It makes a
Hmm.
lot of sense.
I
Yeah.
wonder what
Um,
that's a steady. So you got to. I would assume you have to store that energy somewhere because that. I
I'm
don't know.
still saying to do what I've said before. I think that the big trucks need battery swapping.
All right.
Okay, so then you have all the extra batteries sitting
Right.
there
Yep.
storing the excess
Yep.
energy,
Yep.
and
Yep.
you could provide all this load balancing for the surrounding grid. But part of what this guy was talking about was, though, not dealing with cities, but dealing with the places where there's no electrical infrastructure.
Right.
And think about this: when you have a gas station out in the middle of nowhere, you're trucking it. Of course, you're trucking the fuel in everywhere, right?
Yeah.
But you're hauling it all in. Well, you could be stopping that and just producing it right there at the site. So there's a lot of ways, and with the nature of SMRs, you could start with a smaller capacity, and
What,
then every couple of years add capacity.
yeah. What do they need for cooling? I'm not familiar with that. The
The
SMRs.
SMRs, so
Yeah.
the type we're using, it uses helium. It does not use water,
Okay.
and the
So
helium does not have to be replaced.
okay. So it
So
just keeps recycling.
it just keeps recycling.
Okay.
Yeah. So that is something that doesn't ever get changed. Yeah, there's some real advances in the nuclear space that certainly don't exist in level three, and a lot of generation three nuclear is still being produced. A lot of the first SMRs that are coming out in the United States, they're going to be generation three. So the group I'm working with is doing Gen 4, and they hope to have the first one in North America. So, I mean, that's Gen 4 does exist overseas.
Okay.
So, it'll, and our lead tech, or, our lead scientist, he participated in the one that went in China. So, he's familiar with the technology.
Okay.
But, anyways, but this is, as several companies are starting to put lots of um, semis. Kenworth, Mack, Volvo, all are, you know, trying to
And
get into the space.
we're still waiting for Tesla's semi. I mean, they've got a few of
Yes.
them out prototypes, but yeah.
I had somebody one time arguing on one of the videos about how the Tesla semis only haul potato chips.
Yeah.
When they're hauling Pepsi. But the guy's trying to say no. Pepsi owns all Frito Lay, and all they do is haul. Well,
All they're doing is hauling empty bags
yeah,
with a few
pretty
chips
much.
or Doritos or
Yeah,
whatever in them. Yeah.
yeah, but when in reality, all they're doing is hauling liquids. So it's a different kind of thing. All right. Well, Bill, I think we've gone
I
on
think
long enough.
we've ranted long enough. Thank you, everybody, Owen and everybody. We appreciate your tuning us in and giving us a chance to
Yeah,
chat with
Joel
you
and
about the
Bobby.
directions. Yeah.
All right. Yep. Thanks for watching, and everybody will be back next week. And otherwise, have a great day.